And down to what to say.
Was that?
Double separate, double what to say.
Yeah, no, that's it. Same length of the shirt. Although I will say, just the outset, that what we decided in the next 2 weeks, Mitzvah Hashem, the plan is to have a slightly longer share, next 2 Thursdays. The plan is a slightly longer share, 8 o'clock to 8:45 on the Haggadah. So we'll try and do 2 halves. During the first half, meaning 2 halves as in next week will be the first half of the Haggadah, then we'll kind of just try and sort of go in relative order, and then cover the second half the following week. I won't cover everything, but the idea is to try and have hopefully some good Divrei Torah for the Seder, and to do the necessary preparation of the Haggadah that we always say to ourselves we'll do every year, and yet comes to the Seder and we're like, I wish I had, So anyway, we're trying to help with that. That's the aim. So that will be next 2 weeks. So we're going to take Okay. So for now, we're going to focus on Parshas Vaykhel-Pekudei. So there is an interesting question that the Kli Yakar deals with at the beginning of the Parshas Vaykhel, as to why the order is changed in terms of the significance of Shabbos. So if you look at Parshas Ki Sisa, and the way it works is you've got all the construction of the Mishkan through Truma and Tetzaveh and the beginning of Ki Sisa, and then Aches Shabbos Saiti Shmoiru, beginning of Ki Sisa, the whole the list of all the construction and everything else, and then Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, make sure you keep Shabbos. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael Shabbos, right at the beginning. It's at the beginning of Ki Sisa, just before the Egel Hazov. So the point is that it's at the end of the construction of the Mishkan. From there we learn Aches Shabbos Saiti Shmoiru, that the Mishkan is not Docha Shabbos, right? The Mishkan cannot be built on Shabbos. And the question is, why is it that when it comes to the actual construction, which is detailed in these 2 parshas, is the order reversed? We begin with Shabbos. Right? Vayakel Moshe, right? Yeah, it begins with Shabbos, right? Sheishes Yom Teos Malacha. Vayimashvi Shabbos Yelachem Kodesh Shabbos and Hashem. It begins with Shabbos, and then we've got the description of the Mishkan. Right? Fair question. So the Kli Yakar is in the middle of, if you want to see inside, if you have Vekros Gedolos, it's right in the middle of Posuk Base, Lamed Hey Posuk Base. It is this third paragraph. The third paragraph. It says Ummah, right? Ummah shehiktim, the Parshas Ki Sisa Mishkan Shabbos, and that which Mishkan comes before Shabbos in Parshas Ki Sisa, and it says Acha Shabbos Saiti Shmoru, and from there you learn Ach Shein Mishkan Docha Shabbos, right? And the Mishkan doesn't push away Shabbos, and he says, and he goes on to explain, and he says, the whole point is because of the word ach tells you, but that exclusionary term tells you that although you have to keep, that you have to make sure that that word excludes the Mishkan. The Mishkan doesn't push away Shabbos. He says that it would have been much more straightforward had the Torah mentioned Shabbos first with the construction as well, right, with the instruction, and then you would know it's first, and therefore clearly it takes precedence. So he says. So let me just skip a few lines. Okay. And he goes into what Rashi says. Okay. V'agav ze yituras gamkein loma shino Moshe aseder. And with this we can understand why it is that Moshe changed the order. As we explained. Skip one more line. V'zen, the reason is as follows: Ki Shabbos ein boi kim kavod Hashem yisparach. The purpose of Shabbos is the honor due to Hashem Himself. Lahoros. That's what Shabbos does. It tells us that Hashem created the world. What is the focus of the Mishkan? The Mishkan really has a tremendous focus on the honor due to the Bnei Yisrael. The fact that Hashem rests His divine presence on the Bnei Yisrael. The fact that He forgave them the sin of the Egel Hazav, the golden calf. Hashem, in giving the instruction, he says, puts the construction of the Mishkan first, because Hashem has tremendous compassion and concern for the honor of the Bnei Yisrael. And therefore, that's why the Mishkan is listed in the instruction first, because the focus from Hashem's perspective, so to speak, is on the honor due to Bnei Yisrael, which is what the Mishkan represents. And therefore, the Mishkan comes first. And therefore, since you might think the fact that the Mishkan is presented in the Torah before Shabbos, you might think that it does push away Shabbos, and therefore you have the words ach, but as Shabbos Society Shmira that it doesn't push away Shabbos. Doesn't push away Shabbos. Aval Moshe choshav, but Moshe thought that for the honor of Hashem, Roy lahaktim Shabbos hamora al kvod Yisparach, it's fitting to put Shabbos first, which instructs and teaches about the honor due to Hashem. And then the Mishkan, which teaches about the honor of the Bnei Yisrael. And he says through this, the way it's put here, it's automatically understandable that Shabbos pushes away the Mishkan. Because clearly the fact that the Shabbos is first, right? That must be that must take precedence. So I think that the idea that the Kli Yakar is presenting is a beautiful interplay, if you like, between the different perspectives, so to speak, that Hashem and the Jewish people have in this relationship that's established through the Mishkan and through Shabbos. That from Hashem's perspective, the Mishkan comes first, because the Mishkan is the honor that He wants us to have, and therefore, by resting His Shekhinah amongst us, and therefore that's why He places it first, even though that means Shabbos will only come afterwards. Whereas when it comes to the attitude that we are meant to have, Shabbos takes precedence. Shabbos is entirely representing the kavod of Hashem Himself, and that's why Shabbos is presented in the Torah before the construction of the Mishkan.
It's a difference. This Moshe,
Vaykhel Moshe, right? There are really three accounts of the construction of the Mishkan in the Torah, from the beginning of Truma to the end of Pekudei, right? There is the instruction of Hashem to Moshe as to what to construct. That's Truma, Tetzaveh, and a bit of Vayikisisa. Then you have at the beginning of Vaykhel and most of Pekudei, part of Pekudei, you have Moshe telling the Bnei Yisrael, and again, the whole thing is repeated. This is what Hashem told, this is the thing which Hashem commanded to do, to say, etc. Is what you have to do. And then at the end of Pekudei, you have the actual construction. That's the third account. Vayas, the whole way through is Vayas, and he made, because he actually constructed it. So it's three accounts. And it's part of the whole piece about the significance of the Mishkan, and the fact that not only is it described in great detail, but it's actually repeated three times. And the third time is not in as much detail, but it is all listed again. Right, what he made, right, that they actually did it. Okay, we'll come on to something about maybe that's helpful for that in a moment.
This idea, you said it's similar to Pesach, when we say that Hashem refers to always as Chag HaMatzos.
Right.
What we did well.
Chag HaMatzos, yes.
And we talk about Hashem's government.
Yes.
It's Pesach.
Yes, right. Beautiful. Who I can't remember who says that. I mean, but that is an idea that I've definitely heard as well. Yeah, the idea of the, I should repeat it for the benefit of the tape, as they say. The idea that Hashem refers to Pesach, James is saying the idea that Hashem refers to Pesach as Chag HaMatzos. The Torah calls it Chag HaMatzos because that's Hashem looking at it from our perspective. The fact that we did this, we didn't give time to rise, etc. And we call it Pesach because Hashem was Pesach, looking at it. That's what Hashem did for us, exactly that relationship. Also, I thought to myself that maybe part of what's included in this idea of the Kli Yakar is also the fact that understanding, as this explanation clearly does, that it follows the Egel HaZahav, it's almost like the chizuk, part of the chizuk that Hashem is giving to the Bnei Yisrael, despite the fact that you've fallen so far, I'm going to put your kavod first in first putting the Mishkan before Shabbos, if you like. So it's part of the chizuk that they needed in that way. Now, Rav Shimon Schwab in the Sefer Me'ein Beis HaShoeva has a beautiful idea. Two ideas I wanted to share with you on the parsha that he brings. One is on the melacha of carrying on Shabbos, melacha of Hitzah, of carrying. The Gemara says in Shabbos that we learn this from the Perek Lamed Vov, Posuk Vov. Perek Lamed Vov. No, that can't be Perek Lamed Vov, Posuk Vov. That can't be right. Posuk Vov. Yeah, that's correct. Yes, right, that's right. Right at the beginning of the construction, it says we've got, of course, it's Vayitzav Moshe V'Aviru Kol B'Machana, and they proclaim this voice in the camp. They stop bringing. Right? They shouldn't do any more, give any more donations because they'd received everything they needed. Says the Gemara in Shabbos, base, Hotzah b'Shabbos Heichel Ksiva. Where does it write Hotzah on Shabbos? Where does it write that you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos? Omer Rabbi Yochanan says, Omar Krova Etzav Mesheva Avira Kol Machana. That's where you learn it from, right? Because what does it mean? What does it mean that the Aviru literally means to proclaim a call, a sound, a noise, but it can also mean to carry, right? Ha'avora is to pass something over, or to bring something out, if you like. So to carry something. So this is how it was. So the transportation, right? The idea of Ayasu Oid Malacha is telling you what is it. They shall not do any more malacha. And what is that malacha, as in malacha of Shabbos? What is the malacha that they were doing? Carrying. They were bringing things, right? That was what they were doing, right? They were being ma'avir. They were bringing things. They were transporting something, right? Yeah, they stopped bringing. Yeah, they stopped bringing. Yeah, I think it's being learned from the word vayavir. Yeah. So anyway, that's how it is. Okay. And therefore, also the next pasuk as well, according to this explanation, that the malacha hoyasadayam pasuk zayin, and the malacha was sufficient for all the malacha that was required to do vayser, an extra. That was all they had. We'll come to that in a second. So that's how it is. And he goes on to describe in some detail how we see that the malacha of carrying was considered, Chachamim are always very, very concerned about the not putting people in a position where they might have to transgress and carry on Shabbos. Classic examples, of course, are shofar and lulav and sukkah. The whole concern is there. Why do we not blow shofar on Shabbos? Why do we not read Megillah on Shabbos? Why do we not carry the lulav? And we know the reason is because in case we come to carry, right? So the Gemara says, what is the reason? You might take it in your hand. You might take it to someone who is expert to learn how to do it. Tosfos asks there, why are we not worried that you might take it out your front door? You might carry it from the private to public domain. And the answer is because we're not worried about that, because you're going to remember it's Shabbos when you see your front door. Like, I can't carry outside, so you can remember not to carry, right? So what is the concern? It comes out that the whole concern is only for someone who leaves a shofar or lulav in the street, and you might carry it in the street. Tosfos says, we're not worried you're going to take your lulav and you're going to carry it out the front door because you're going to remember it's Shabbos. That's why it talks about Shemiyitlenu biyodo v'yavirenu arba amas b'shus rabim. That's what it says. The concern is you might carry it 4 amas in the street. That means the whole reason that you can't do these things on Shabbos is because of a concern that you might have a lulav or shofar in the street somehow, and you might end up carrying them 4 amas. It's a very unusual situation. Who is going to leave the esrog in the street so that you might then pick it up on Shabbos? Someone might pick it up on Shabbos and carry it 4 amas. And the answer is because that he suggests is because it's an exceptional malacha carrying. Because hotzah is a malacha which people it doesn't involve any change in the item, right? He brings an Ozaro, says that there's no change in the item, and it is the most difficult really to understand that it is in the category of a malacha, because all the other malachas involves in some way a changing of state of the item, a creative activity, whereas the malacha of hotzah doesn't. And for this reason, we have to be exceptionally careful. It needs a special ashara. It needs a special warning and telling us again and again, be very, very careful about hotzah. Don't cheapen it in any way. Don't have a lackadaisical attitude towards it, because it is as significant a malacha as any of the others. And he says you find an interesting support for that as well in the Gemara. There is far more space devoted in the Gemara to carrying, to the rules around hotzah. If you look at Masechah Shabbos and the whole of Eruvin, about the first 6 parakim of Shabbos are mostly about carrying. So there was far more space devoted to it. And he says that the suggestion he says is that he brings up Shimshon Rafal Hirsch, that there are two aspects to Shabbos. There are two aspects to Shabbos in the Torah. One is Zeichel Amaisa Bereshis, right? One is to remembrance of creation, and the other one is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. The other one is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. And he says that that when it comes to most of the malachas, in other words, every malacha apart from carrying, it really fits into the category of the remembrance of Maaseh Bereshis. They're all creative activities, and therefore we're not allowed to do them, and that shows that Hashem created the world, right? But he suggests again, quoting Rav Hirsch, that the concept of carrying on Shabbos, Hotzah, that is particularly Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why? Why is that got to do with leaving Mitzrayim? Because the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim is understanding that the Shabbos was given only to the Bnei Yisrael. We know that, it's only given to the Bnei Yisrael. And the idea of a private domain, or Shus HaYochid, is that it's its own place. It's surrounded by walls. It is its own unique area. And that is where the Kedusha of Shabbos belongs. The street belongs to everyone, the whole world, everyone else in the world. And therefore, there is no Kedusha of Shabbos in that place. And therefore, when a person transports and carries something from the private domain, where the Kedusha of Shabbos, so to speak, is meant to be, into the public domain, which it belongs to the whole world, who were not given the gift of Shabbos, what happens is it's a relaxing or a neglecting of the fundamental concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim itself. What did we receive at Yetzias Mitzrayim? Our uniqueness as a nation. Right? The idea of being sanctified as an Am Segula, as a treasured nation, okay? And therefore, the idea he suggests of carrying represents this more than any of the other malachas. It represents the idea of needing to remain, and it means not physically because you can walk yourself out, but it means the idea of not transporting and moving and carrying something from a private to a public domain, which is the classic example of carrying, right? Is meant to represent this idea of remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim, that we have a uniqueness, that the street belongs to everyone, and the private domain is the domain of Shabbos, is the domain of us as the unique people, the Jewish people as unique people, as an Am Segula. It's not an explanation of why carrying is not allowed, right? That's others suggest why that is. But in a sense, it is simply suggesting that of all of the malachos of Shabbos, this is the one which most epitomizes the Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim aspect as opposed to the Zeichel Amaisa Bereshis aspect, because it's less of a creative and more of a remember your identity, remember where you are meant to be, and that you're not the same as the rest of the world. Therefore, you cannot carry into the street with everyone else, if you like. That's the idea he's suggesting. I thought it was a very beautiful idea and very different in a very different explanation. He also says, another idea he says, is on that second posuk, the one we just quoted, posuk Zion, there was enough, the malacha was sufficient, everything they brought was sufficient for all the malacha, and there was extra. And he brings a medrash. The medrash says that they came to the Moshe Rabbeinu and they said, well, what should we do with the extra? We collected too much, so what are we supposed to do with it? And Moshe says, the medrash says, Omaloi, Moshe asked Hashem, what should we do with the extra? Omaloi said to him, Lech va'aseh bohem Mishkan lo edus. Go and make for them a Mishkan for the edus, which is, generally speaking, refers to the Torah. So this is very surprising. What does that mean? What is another Mishkan Ha'edus? That's what they're building. They're building the Mishkan Ha'edus. What does that mean? And he says that it could be that the concept of Mishkan Ha'edus, the Mishkan of testimony, refers to the Aron, right? Because that's where the Luchos are. And that is the center point of the Mishkan, and that's where everything comes from. And the Kedusha comes from that place of the Aron. Now, the idea of the Torah is fundamentally that and this is where it's different to Avodah. Avodah, as in the Korbanos, has set times, fixed patterns. You have the morning and the afternoon, and it's got right set. When do you do the Avodah? You do it at fixed times, like davening, it's fixed time. Torah has no limits. It's all time. Anytime, every time, it's all the time. That's what it is, right? No limits. And therefore, what happens is that when they brought too much and they brought more that was than was necessary, they were demonstrating that there was no limits to what they wanted to provide and contribute to this enterprise. And Hashem says, Moshe Rabbeinu, leave the extra amount that they've collected, and from that you will make a Mishkan Ho'edus, a real Mishkan of testimony, which is fundamentally based on the sanctity of the Torah. Because through the very fact, he says, that there was more than was necessary, what was more than was necessary will be left as a sign forever, almost like piled up in a special storehouse, as a sign that the Mishkan is a Mishkan Ha'edus. It's a Mishkan of testimony, it's a Mishkan that's fundamentally centered on the Torah, to which there are no limits. Do you understand? So in other words, the fact that they went beyond that which was necessary, showing that their giving had no limits, is a sign forever of the fundamental role that the center point of the Mishkan is meant to play in their lives, in our lives. You understand? It's a beautiful idea. The Vahoseh, the extra, where will it go? It will go to Mishkan Ha'edus. It will symbolize forever that there are no limits.
But what did they actually do with it?
That's a good question. According to him, it seems he is suggesting that what they actually did, Tashir Ba'otzar, they left it in a storehouse. They left it in a special, as a symbolic sign almost. That's what he suggests. Yeah, symbolically representing that. Okay, a couple of brief ideas on. We don't have much time on Pekudei. We'll probably have time for one of them. That's okay. There's another medrash on the beginning of Parshas Vaykhel-Pekudei. The pasuk says, "Eile Pekudei HaMishkan, Mishkan Ha'edus." These are the countings of the Mishkan Ha'edus, and the medrash says on this pasuk the following: Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Hashem says to the Israel. First pasuk in Pekudei, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael b'shah she'asisen es ha'egel. When you constructed the egel Azov, hichastem osi ve'ele Elohecha Yisrael. You angered me with the words, "These are your God. This is your God, Israel." Right? The whole idea of when they created the egel Azov and they proclaimed it as a leader for them. Achshav now she'asisem es ha'mishkan. Now that you create the Mishkan, ve'ele ani misratzeh lachem. The word "ele," I am appeased to you. Hava Eila Pekudei Mishkan. Right? That's, in other words, the Eila is an atonement for Eila. You said Eila Elohecha Yisrael. Eila Pekudei Mishkan. How are you going to atone for that Eila? The Eila Elohecha Yisrael. Eila Pekudei Mishkan. You're going to donate to the Mishkan, right? And the Beis HaLevi explains like this. The Beis HaLevi says that
That's a medrash.
that's a medrash. Why?
No, because I did this for this.
Oh, this I did. Okay, the next bit of it is a Beis HaLevi, for in the Sefer here called Toras Chaim, brings a Beis HaLevi. The Beis HaLevi says that what went wrong with the Egel Hazov? Three fundamental principles of faith were transgressed through the Egel Hazov. You know this. Three things. Number one, the existence of Hashem, because they were denying that. I hope you understand that. In some way, and there's a lot more to talk about what the Egel Hazov did, etc. Torah min hashamayim, the idea of Torah min hashamayim, they also were denying that as well. And schar va'onesh derech hashgacha, the idea that Hashem rewards and punishes, that's hashgacha protis, the idea that Hashem governs our lives and rewards and punishes based on our actions. And in the Mishkan, he says, tiknu shloshes hadvarim halamu. And in the Mishkan, they rectified all these things. As he's saying, more than just Eila and Eila, but they were specifically dealing with each of these three components. How so? Because there are three key kalim in the Mishkan. There were others, but he deals with these three. Aron, the Shulchan, and the Menorah. He says the Aron contained the Luchos, which of course represent Torah min hashamayim. Torah is that, Torah min hashamayim. The Luchos is, and the Luchos also, of course, is the Ma'aseh Elokim Heimot. They are the work of Hashem's hand in that sense. But Hashulchan is Sha'olav Aruch Lechem Haponim. He says that's where you have the Lechem Haponim. What are the Lechem Haponim? The Lechem Haponim were there. It says Lefonai Tomid. They were always there. Hashem says they will always be in front of me, and that represents the constant presence of Hashem. The idea, just like the Lechem Haponim lasted miraculously from the whole week, so do Hashem's presence is always there, directly involved in our lives. The idea of hashgacha pratis, and he says that the menorah represents the existence of Hashem. Remezes l'ara das Hashem u'metziusei, right? The everything is focused on the existence of Hashem, because with the menorah it says El mul panei ha-menorah yo'iru. They're facing towards the menorah. All the lights face towards the menorah, right? So it's the notion of existence. The flame, I think, represents, if you like, the idea of the existence of Hashem, and all the other lights face the center light. Why? Right? Ki biladei metziuso, he says, Ein shum metzius. There is no existence without the existence of Hashem. So each of the three elements in the Mishkan represent each of these three principles of faith. The Aron representing belief in the Torah and Hashemayim. The Lechem Ponim, their constant existence is Hashem's constant involvement in our lives. And the Menorah, the idea that they're all pointing towards that center flame, that everything is only sustained by Hashem's existence, Metzius Hashem, right? Those three ideas. And therefore he says, and this will finish. He says that if we understand that the Mishkan is coming to atone for what they did wrong with the Egel Azov, and it's other ways as well. They gave their gold, right? So all the gold was given to Egel Azov. So again, it's rectified by giving the gold for the construction of the Mishkan. There's lots of other parallels like this as well. Therefore, he says, we can also understand why it is. And if you look, you'll understand this. If you listen to the Leining on Shabbos, you'll see there's a phrase repeated again and again and again in Parshas Vaykhel-Pekudei, when they actually construct the Mishkan. Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. Again and again and again. Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. And they did this the whole way through. Look, especially at the end when it talks about the actual construction, everything, almost every posuk, Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. Kasher as Hashem commanded Moshe. Why again and again and again? It means like this, he said, because even though Betzalel was a great chacham and he was tremendously wise, and we know he knew how to bind together Letzaref, the Osius, with which the letters, with which the world was created, and he knew everything, and he was incredibly wise and clever and everything else. He knew all the secrets of creation. When he made the Mishkan, only one thing mattered, as Hashem told us to do. Whatever Hashem told Moshe to do, that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter. I'm not how clever I am, what I want, what I think or don't think, or it was all irrelevant. It was all irrelevant. His only focus was doing the Ratzon Hashem, what Hashem wanted him to do, and not because his own intelligence, right, thought he should do X, Y, Z, right? And with this, he says, that was really the ultimate atonement for the Chet of the Egel Hazov, because the Egel Hazov came about because they went through their own process and thought, well, Moshe's not coming back, and everyone's going to lead it. But you weren't told to do that. That wasn't what Hashem wanted you to do. This wasn't what the focus was, and you lost sight of that. So the whole end of Pekudei is Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe, because ultimately that's our mission in life. Our mission in life is to do the right thing, to do what we're told. Or as Rabbi Sachs put it, as a Chayim Levracha, in his immortal way, when all else fails, just read the instructions. That's all you need to do. Read the instructions. Don't worry about anything else. Just read the instructions. Okay. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.